Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the second US focused Wealth Tech Talks from the Wealth Mosaic. My name is Stephen Wall, one of the two co-founders of the Wealth Mosaic, based in London, but we are looking at the US market today, and we are looking at the topic of leveraging data in wealth management. So we're going to be with you for roughly an hour today. Good conversation across various aspects around the role of data. We all know, practically there's no conversation anymore taking place in and around technology in the wealth space that doesn't have a data angle to it. So today I'm joined by three great guests, two in the US, one in Europe, by Dan Ciavarella, of Head of Sales Wealth Americas at Refinitiv, based in San Diego, by Rob Wrzesniewski. I'm going to struggle with that one again, don't you, Rob? Head of Global Solution at SEI Private Banking, based on the East Coast, and by Jaime, Bolivar, Managing Director of TechRules, based in Madrid. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I'll ask each of you to do a quick introduction to yourself, your role, and kind of an opening statement shortly. A quick bit of admin. We will, as I say, be on for around an hour, 45, 50 minutes, perhaps longer, of discussion. For those listening in, feel free to send in questions. We will be able to answer them either as we go, if appropriate, or at the end of the session. This is being recorded, so if you want to listen in again later, it will be available on Bright Talk on demand a couple of hours after this live session. And we will be back with you again in a couple of weeks with a third Wealth Tech Talk. So, guys, Dan, can I just ask you quickly, first of all, to introduce yourself, your role, what you do, and perhaps, if you can, give us an opening statement to the topic of leveraging data in wealth management?
Absolutely. It is good morning here in San Diego. And as Stephen indicated, I am Head of Business Development here at Refinitiv. Refinitiv is a relatively new name for a 120-year-old business, as we were the financial and risk business of Thomson Reuters. We are today the largest provider of financial news, data, and analytics globally. And I am responsible for all of our wealth business across the Americas. I have a 21-year career now in financial services. I started as a financial advisor, held many different roles throughout the industry. So I've got a wide array of expertise here. We as Refinitiv service 40,000 customers globally, just to give you some scope. We have 180,000 financial advisors using our wealth desktop today, and we deliver 3.5 million news headlines to 45,000 companies daily. My opening salvo, I guess I just wanted to say what we're experiencing, I think, is wide disruption across the industry, right? We're seeing threat of new entrants. We're seeing regulatory changes that are impacting the way in which financial advice is rendered. And we're seeing, I think, an outright change in customer preferences, really driven by FANG digital experiences. And that's resulted in an industry-wide push for transformation. I think that's driven by demographic changes, technological changes, as I mentioned, regulatory changes, and cost influences that I think have been further accelerated by COVID. What I'm seeing is firms are responding really in two ways. One, there's a significant focus on building customized client experiences that reflect those changing demographics. And then second, really, I think firms are trying to figure out how to build a tech stack that enables a more client-centric data infrastructure, connecting both the front and back office. And I think thematically that drives into our conversation today, talking about how data really powers those experiences.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. Jaime, can I pass to you next, please, for your quick introduction?
Well, Jaime Bolivar, I'm Managing Director of TechRules. TechRules is a firm that was born in the year 2000. It started as a .com company, but very soon we migrated into the wealth management space. And basically, we have a solution called Tower, this wealth management platform for advisors. And also we provide the robo solution for clients, very active in this space. Always talking about data. Data has been a key issue for us since we started. And I'm very, very focused on, very concerned about the product, not only about the business of the company. So very close to the product. And really enjoying this space. The pandemic has, I would say, accelerate changes in financial entities, the way they use technology, and it has become even more important than it used to be.
Thank you very much. And finally to Rob, please, your intro.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Wrzesniewski. I run solutions for SEI's private banking network. So those are solutions that really span the full gamut of experiences, from end clients to advisors to portfolio managers to account administrator and trust officers. I'm with SEI now for about 29 years. SEI itself started in 1968. We process about $1 trillion worth of wealth. Globally, about 11,000 clients. Just some information in there. Over 7,000 of those are investment advisors. Roughly 45 of the top 100 investment managers are clients, as well as 10 of the top 20 banks. And we service all of those clients with a combination of SaaS and BPaaS type of offerings, much focused on outsource relationships. About 3,000 employees, roughly in 8 nations or so. And I'm excited about the topic. Data can seem dry, right? And if you look at it and think about data through a lens from 2000, 2001, you were very much talking about bits and bytes and things that existed in systems. And I think one of the things that's moving at almost light speed is how do you leverage that data into experiences that, quite honestly, consumers have come to expect, whether it's in financial services or other verticals.
Fantastic. Cool. Thank you very much. Dan, let's just come straight back to you. I think both you and Robert touched on the experiences point, but if we just look at, the backdrop, the status of the market and some of the drivers here, why is data now something that we all talk about from pretty much every angle? You talked about client experience, you talked about compliance, there's advisor enablement, there's all sorts of different elements. What would you highlight? How would you describe some of those drivers that are pushing data to the front of the agenda?
Great question. Everything we sort of talk about today is we're known for content and for data, but customers have come to us and said, look, you have all of this information that we can consume. The challenge we have is how do we take that data and how do we take that information and how do we curate bespoke experiences targeted to the different types of personas that we're trying to attract. There's so much data out there, and it's difficult for the end consumer, I think, to be able to whittle through all of that data to really extract out intelligent and actionable insight. And it's the same for financial advisors, right? Between all of the custodial data that they have, if you look at sort of that life cycle of data capture, from onboarding to prop gen to implementation to service, there are so many different types of data that's being surfaced through that process. And finding a way to take the right data, surface it to the right customer at the right time, I think is where the industry is headed and what we're being asked to help deliver and deploy for our customers. And it's complex, right? You have two types of data. You've got structured data and unstructured data. I think the structured data we're familiar with, right? It's taking custodial data such as transactions and holdings. And the unstructured data is a little bit more difficult to understand and to work with, right? What are our customers reading? How are they engaging with our content? What are they saying on social media? When they call customer service, are we doing voice analysis on their experience and how that works? How do you stitch together that unstructured data with the structured data in order to create a more robust and engaging experience? Because, if you look at the Robinhoods of the world and many others in the fintech space, it is incumbent upon the financial industry to find a way to create fully engaged experiences that keep a customer and expand that customer relationship. And I think data plays a massive role in that. We no longer talk about just market data. We talk about market data married with client data to drive client centricity and personalization.
Thank you. We'll come back onto the types of data if we can in a bit, because I think it's a bit confusing, right? Actually, what does the term data mean?
Right.
Jaime, from your perspective, Dan's just mentioned client experience and delivering these personal experiences through all the types of data that are available. Any other drivers that you've seen from your interactions with clients?
Data is the fuel for wealth management. Data should be used to add value and make a business more competitive. Data management represents a significant opportunity as well as a serious challenge. The need of data in wealth management is obvious. Calculations, building analytical info for portfolios and assets, dashboard KPIs, regulation compliance. At TechRules, we've had a dedicated team since we started in the year 2000. We have more, for instance, just to give you an example, we have more than 300,000 instruments in our database, coming from different vendors, or the ones that we collaborate. I can say, Reuters, we used to work since we started. Cleaning data before using, monitoring, data spies. That's our job. Garbage in, garbage out is as true today as it was when the phrase was first coined in the mid-60s. You may have powerful analytical tools. If that data is not good, then they are useless. So while good data helps lead a good decision making, bad data can lead you to poor decision making and potentially disastrous consequences. I'll give you an example. Time-weighted return, for portfolios is critical, and the quality of data has to be, perfect. Otherwise, you may be telling your clients the wrong numbers, and that's a huge mistake. And so you can't fail in that sense.
Fantastic. Rob, what are your thoughts on data? I don't know client experience. We've got portfolio analytics. Good data, bad data. You need almost data to be perfect in certain instances. Any other drivers here that are pushing the term data and all of its mechanisms into play for wealth managers?
Yeah, I think so. I think, for years, since there's been technology, there's been data, right? It's sort of the bricks, right, in which every system ever been built on. But if you think about sort of the customer's expectation right now, if you look at it, I think, Stephen, your question on do we understand data? I say yes. Do we understand what to do with it in the best way? Probably not, right? And I think that's something that's a challenge. If you think about it, it's in a lot of cases, whether you're providing a single system or an entire platform that's got multiple personas in it, there's data resident in each of those. There's data that's resident across those, and really thinking about how do you piece that world together. It's almost like, back when we were all in high school and we took geometry, and you'd get a problem, they give you two pieces of information, and you would use that to figure out the five other variables that were on that in that problem. I think that's something that is going on right now, at a really quick rate. Like, how do you combine that information? How do you derive data from data that you have into data that you don't have, but and then again deliver that? I think, Dan, you said it best: right data, right time, to the right user, and then do it in the right medium too, right? So I think we've all been around long enough to remember all data went on a statement. That was it. You got a once a quarter snapshot, and that was the world. Well, that's not the expectation anymore. And trying to keep technology stacks, running at that same speed of technology, more modern technology adoption, is something that we'll probably be wrestling with forever.
Yeah.
And statements, by the way, that were impossible to decipher, right? Purposefully confusing and difficult to understand. That world's over, right? We've got to pivot to make it more usable.
I must say, I'm not quite sure it's over. I've heard some horror stories this year in the UK, right? So paper-based statements costing hundreds of thousands to deliver, being out of date, etc., etc. Dan, quickly, what is data, right? Because there's obvious data, there's portfolio data, there's the things attached to products that Jaime mentioned, but there's now content, there's compliance, there's client profiling, there's behavioral data, there's all sorts of different things. So I think Rob said that the world doesn't, or the market does understand it. I'm not sure I do. I wonder if you can clarify a little bit more about what we really mean by data today.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, I think it's important to start with what the problem statement is that you're trying to solve. Understanding what action you're trying to derive is a critical first step, right? There's so much data out there, things that can influence action and decision. And we've got a lot of it, right? As you said, behavioral, market, data coming from financial planning systems, data coming from our marketing automation systems. It's what information do we need in order to get the action that we want from our customers and our constituents. I think that's an important place to sort of begin and level set. And then it's understanding, okay, if that's the action that we want to take, what data do we need to surface and populate to put in the hands of the right person at the right time. So, millennials, as an example. Millennials are hungry for data. We just published a study it was called the Gold Standard of Wealth Management, and we surveyed a number of different consumers across the globe. And what we found was that the millennial consumer really demands and craves fundamental data. More data than we've really ever seen demanded in the past. But it's not just providing that data, it's providing a way for that customer to understand that data, analyze that data, and then result in an action and a next step. I think that's what we all want to get to. So I think to answer your question in a long-winded way, really, data is the things that we use and the content that we propagate in order to get the right decisions at the right time from the right customers.
I would like to.
On mute, yeah, go on. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
Please.
I would like to, to be more precise about data, and I would like to name, we're not at TechRules. We're integrating a lot of data from different sources. Okay. And when I talk about integrations, we integrate custodians, OMS, all the management systems, market data vendors, account onboarding, account aggregation, new communication channels like WhatsApp, video conference. All that information, you have to store it, and then you have to analyze it. Role-based models, and now social media integration. For example, we got a platform called MyT Advisor, where we analyze market sentiment about stocks or funds, and we also do some artificial intelligence on clustering, relating portfolios that have common goals. So you can imagine all these type of sources, the amount of data that is being generated. So having a robust and flexible data management approach is a must.
Great. Rob, yeah, sorry, Dan, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying it's a really critically important point, right? Having the systems to be able to ingest and process is key.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, isn't it, Rob? So, multiple systems, siloed systems not connected, not talking to each other, different power bases managing different slithers within a firm. Do you think the market is in a position to fully ingest and make use of the data sources, these expanded data sources that are now available?
So I think that's the $64 million question, because the answer should be yes, but the reality of it is, especially for some of the firms that are on this panel, there's data that goes back decades, right? And Dan, you made the point, some of it's within a blurb, and you can't pull it out. So I think looking at data in a way, and looking at your organization in a way to say, okay, we've got valuable information. We need to get it in the right hands at the right time. I'm going to say a dirty word. There's such a thing called technical debt, right, that we all deal with, right, in this industry. And a lot of that technical debt comes from storing data in places where it's either, unusable, or it's hard to get to, or quite honestly, maybe repetitive with other stores. So I think, Stephen, your question's a good one in that it takes investment, and not just investment in technology, but also investment in people, investment in processes. Can you use that data? Is it redistributed data? Do you need to check that box? So, I think that the answer is yes, if as an organization you take it seriously, prioritize it, and really try to be good at not just moving data around and getting it in front of people, but also the management of that data, and doing it in such a way where it might not matter that it's sitting in some legacy system that was born 20 years before the internet. So
yeah. So Dan, coming back to you, if I want to build a data strategy, I know what I want to achieve. What are the kind of building blocks to making sure that my data strategy is applicable to the goals that I have as a business? I mean, what are we budget, people, process, technology, data providers? Is there a kind of perfect mix, or a close to perfect mix?
Yeah, I think you have to take an honest look at where you are as an organization. What does your infrastructure look like? I think a lot of the firms that we work with, right, it's sort of, sometimes it's like a museum of technology, right? And finding ways to take data that is unusable and make it usable is important. So where are you on your digital transformation journey? What resourcing do you have available to change things, and how are you prioritizing those projects to drive the right and most meaningful outcomes? So if it's revenue, right? How are you expanding revenue opportunities, and where do you need to invest from an infrastructure standpoint in order to consume and deploy that? Fortunately, there's tech accelerators now that I think can get firms to a place very quickly. Like, for example, we work with firms that are taking custodial data that today is difficult to work with. They don't really have it in a place that they can leverage to other parts of the organization and other digital properties. What we're finding is that firms are coming to us and using our client data layer. So we have a structured database approach where we take all that data, we cleanse it, we make those associations, and then we expose it as an API. So in essence, we're giving them the ability to use their own data by also marrying it with market data. So that's a real strong tech accelerator for firms that are not in a place where they can go through a pretty strong digital transformation from an infrastructure standpoint.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in our database, the Wealth Mosaic, we see more and more firms that are really focused on that data cleansing, data availability, sort of making data available and relevant and clean for the user. So there's sort of a data intermediary of some form, or an accelerator, like you say, Dan. Jaime, I wonder, in your experience, when you go into a firm and data is clearly an issue, what are the kind of things that you are doing for them and with them to put them in a place where they can really get the most, or at least more, from the data than they do today or currently?
I mean, data I would say is the first part of our projects. I mean, which data we're going to have, the availability of data and the quality of that data. And to be honest, some projects have failed because these legacy systems that they have were not able to provide the data we needed to produce the calculus we need to for the advisors. And so it's the first and the biggest challenge, I would say. You may have the beautiful interfaces, user experience, that if the data is not good enough, you have nothing. You have nothing. And that's something that as Dan said, I mean, the entity has to really understand where they are in order to be realistic on the goals of the projects. And as I said, at the beginning is the first thing you need to approach in a project. And typically, a big entity, a big bank, a tier 1 bank, they have different feeds of data. I can say, I mean, one project had 18 different feeds that we had to integrate and manage. That was a challenge. And that was their main problem. It's not about painting PDFs or doing really nice things and cool things on the web, but getting that data, understand that data, modify, and have a quality process that really gives you you're secure that you're going to use that information the right way. So yeah, every project, whenever we start, that's the first point first thing we talk about. And then, I mean, of course, there are now new functionalities that provide new data, very interesting, that you can leverage on it, and you can have to really get in depth on that, and that can add more value to your proposition.
Yeah. Okay, and Rob, so Dan talked about the sort of data accelerator and the service sort of cleansing data, and Jaime said it's sort of projects are founded on data. What about from your perspective or SEI's perspective? How do you approach a project? I mean, is it data first, or do you have specific tools to make sure the data is in place? You can then do the rest of the work.
We do, actually, and I think we've all probably come at solving the same problem, maybe in slightly different ways, maybe in some of the very similar ways, but creating a data layer so you can plug into 18 or 36 or X amount of systems, and then not preclude usage of new applications that might be valuable and might be created. I think that's key. I think one of the things, you have to aggregate data and normalize the data, and then put it in places where it's useful. But I think one of the areas where what we try to do here at SEI as well is then try to transform that organization to be able to be valuable on top of that data, right? So what I mean by that is, the good news is, say maybe you've cleaned up what might be, multiple different holdings records or address records or, information around transactions. Well, that's more than likely going to have an impact on workflows of the teams that are servicing clients. So working with those clients to say, okay, the reality is, was A, now it's B. And by the way, here's the impact it could have for you to realize the full value of what we just did. And then here's how we're going to help transform you, which is sometimes painstaking, working with, teams everywhere from ops all the way up through, the folks that do client reviews. So, but that's something that we've realized that is important for us to do as a necessity to get clients to get the full amount of value out of the change.
Yeah, Dan, that's an interesting point, isn't it? So you get your data structure in place, you know what you want, you know what you're trying to achieve, you get your data lake in place, so all of the data feeds into one place. What does that then have a knock-on effect to? So who is then impacted by whether you've actually used well or not used well? So which parts of the organization, or what happens next for a firm to make best use of that new data layer?
Yeah, I mean, most of that resides within the tech organization within the firm. And I think, that process of creating that data layer, doing all the work to cleanse and create some hygiene with the data, and now it's ready to be used. I think it's incumbent upon the firm to create a culture that enables both the business side of the organization as well as the tech side of the organization to come together in a unified way with common goals. I see often there's sometimes conflict there, and I see that creates stress and tension and delays projects, and time to market is affected by that because there's debates going on internally around how things should and shouldn't be done. What I think is key is that everybody's on the same page with the overall mission of what we're trying to accomplish, right? How are we trying to build an experience? And then once we have that data in a usable way, what data do we need? What kind of an experience do we want to create? I think that's bringing in both the product teams, that's bringing in the business, that's bringing in marketing. They play a huge role in this as well today, really just to understand how we can curate the journey. What does the user journey look like, both for the financial advisor, if it's a financial advisor facing system, or for an end investor, if you're delivering a portal. And then through that, what personas are you trying to attract? I think you have to really make sure you understand the customer first, and then everything flows backwards from there. I think if you don't fully understand who your customer is, what data is important to them, and what kind of experience you need to deliver, you'll struggle.
Jaime, would you concur with that? I mean, often the critique of wealth management, and I think this is probably true internationally, is that it's inside-out thinking. It thinks and gives to the clients rather than listens to the clients and gives them what they want. From a data perspective, do you think the market is client-centric enough, or it's still a little bit too inward-looking?
I think now we got much more data than we used to have some years ago. So much more about clients, and so it's really a challenge, but an opportunity to really provide a service that really fits your clients. To do a right financial planning, you need a lot of data in order to give a good proposal to your client. And now we are able to put all that information together and make a proposal that makes a lot of sense for them. So now with the robot advisory, that it's a precious time to really give a much better service to your clients. So it's as I say, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And we are helping many entities in trying to have the information properly based so they can make the most of it. So I think it's a very good time to really improve your services and be much more client-centric, as you said.
Yep. Rob, if we think of some opportunities, I'm a wealth management organization. I've got my data sorted out. I know what I want to achieve, or I think I know what I want to achieve, and I've got my tech in place. I've got my data lake in place. what kind of opportunities maybe have you seen from client engagements or sort of business data clients? What kind of achievements can firms have from getting this data in place and maximizing the benefit of it?
So that's what matters, right? So you've got the technology in a good spot. You've got the data in a good spot. How do you leverage that into success for clients? I think it really can manifest itself through a bunch of different lenses, right? If you think about sort of the financial planning process Dan was talking about, where somebody's going in, they're putting together portfolios for you. You've got investment rules around those portfolios, whether they're ESG related or maybe more regulatory related. Applying those to a portfolio in a way that's not manual, right? That doesn't involve the client having to be in the middle of that is huge. And if you think about some of the things that we've helped clients do with data is, how do you do things like look at qualified monies, whether ISAs or IRAs, and say, hey, you've only got 2 weeks to make a contribution, or guess what, you're in drawdown phase. You need to draw that down, right? And do that in a way that's not confusing, that adds value, feels like a positive touch. And then I think being smart enough, Stephen, to look at it and say, which of those types of I guess client benefits should be direct client benefits. Certainly, the financial services for years with data was fairly opaque. You had to go to an intermediary to kind of tell you what was going on with your wealth. We need to be careful not to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, because some of that data could potentially freak somebody out, right? If I'm looking at it and I'd like to get I want to get maybe a text alert telling me there was activity on my account. I don't want a text alert telling me I'm not going to meet my retirement goal, right? That should be delivered. That information should flow through the appropriate channel. So there's some things we've done, and then I think it's important to kind of eat your own cooking a little bit. So something that we've done here is, how do we use data to make sure that we're just the better partner for our client, whether those KPIs related in the operational area, or maybe we look at it and we've done some things around as a platform provider. I think we can all relate to this. You get constant client feedback, right? And sometimes you've never heard it before, other times it's part of a trend. Well, how do we take the subjectivity out of that and basically even use that type of data, collect it from clients, give them the chance to potentially collaborate on it and help us prioritize along with them. So those are some things that we've done that's been pretty interesting as a technology product person. That can be a little scary, right? We've got another voice coming in, but I think it's an important voice.
Perfect. Dan, I know Refinitiv have done the study, you referenced it earlier, or maybe from client projects. Anything else to add in terms of what firms can do with data? So opening up opportunities that maybe didn't exist before because they didn't have that knowledge or that data set, or they didn't have a platform to deliver it to clients or to enable advisors. Are there clear wins for firms from better use of data, better platforms to put in front of clients or advisors?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's on two fronts, really. I mean, if you look at the state of the business of financial advice today, it's definitely in flux. I think with the best interest rule and sort of the fiduciary guidelines that are being put in place, how an advisor engages with clients is changing. And I think it's requiring them to spend more time with customers. So that's one trend. The other trend is, we're still seeing cost compression. So advisors are really needing to drive better efficiency into their business so that they can expand the number of clients that they're capable of servicing. The benchmark I was always familiar with was 100 clients. Was really the top of the line for an advisor to be able to service them well. But that has to expand. And we can use data to expand and build that efficiency. And so if we do this right, and we create the right data infrastructure, right, and we have the right analytics that sits on top, we can drive next best action. And that's where we're driving our business, is saying things like, hey, and Rob alluded to this a little bit, right? Like, did you know that this client has this position sitting in cash? It's an excess amount, you should deploy it. Or even getting more granular at the security level, right? This security has a realized gain, you're sitting on an unrealized loss. Maybe we can do some things to tax loss harvest. So I think there's a whole world out there of helping advisors generate more revenue opportunities while providing actionable insight from the analytics we can run on top of it. I think on the client portal side, it's as I stated at the beginning, right? It's about creating an engaging experience. I think we often say, well, we'll just throw a statement into a client portal and that's good enough. That is not good enough, right? We have got to really invest that in a world of the pandemic where we're all virtual and we're talking to ourselves on camera. Having that digital experience that helps create stickiness and builds that engaging experience is going to go a long way to expanding the AUM you control of that client and down the road. So you have to think intelligently about how you're going to do that, how you're going to surface that information to help give them an opportunity to contribute, right? Part of that is offsetting the data capture piece to the client. Why not use the client portal as a mechanism to grab data from them and have them populated? So I think that's the path forward, right?
Yep, great. Jaime, Dan just touched on some of the tools of client portals, even getting clients to self-service through some of those technologies. So, a firm's got its data strategy in place. What are the tools that play a role in delivering that to clients? So I think you touched on the sort of robo-advisory model earlier. There are advisor desktops, there's client portals. What else is there in the tech stack that is important to deliver?
Well, there is something that is an actual trend, and it's got a huge impact in the industry. These are the APIs. I think the surest way to address the issue of data quality is with technology that can accommodate the standards protocols and APIs for connectivity and integration with the widest range of banks, custodians, and brokers. These solutions automatically collect and aggregate information, thereby eliminating the resulting errors from handling data. So once in the system, more advanced technology and reporting can complement other solutions to extract value. And again, I would like to name the robo-advisors. The popularity of robo-advising has continued to increase within the wealth management industry. The development of these services started in automated portfolio allocations, and firms are looking to expand the scope of the services to other areas, such as goal-based advice, business succession planning, insurance, and other automation-enabled activities. So I would say those two big trends they're based on data. And as I said, APIs is a great infrastructure to integrate data and control data and automatically, aggregate information.
Yeah, fantastic. Rob, can you expand on any of that or add more details in terms of the tech stack? Obviously, SEI is a significant provider of technology into the US as well as the UK wealth management marketplace. Jaime's talked about APIs there, we talked about robo-advice. Dan touched upon client portals. I think I might have mentioned the advisor desktop. And what else is important in terms of the tech stack to make sure that data is pushed through to where it needs to be?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things that come into play, and we're all talking about that wealth journey, right? So, from taking a suspect to a prospect to a client, and then hopefully keeping that client for years. It's incredibly complex. In some cases, smaller firms, you've got one person wearing multiple hats along that, right? So that's a one type of problem to solve. In other cases, those individuals might be on different continents, all sort of adding value into that relationship. I think if you look at it, and Stephen, you said the word earlier, the term data lake, whether you call that a data lake or a data layer, that's something that I think really kind of sits at the bottom of it, because otherwise you're sitting in a position where your front end value is driven by your back end capability and modernity, right? Which can be, which is going to vary all the way across. So, Jaime, you mentioned APIs. I think, they make the world go round at this point. We're in the middle of, probably, inbound, outbound, 6 million plus APIs a month from clients who are just trying to interact with the information that's here in order to power their client experiences, or our own APIs where we use them to power experiences. And I think, there's a side of that. You could talk about software, you could talk about hardware. That's a lot of time where these discussions go. And I think one of the things that is maybe not appreciated enough is also investing in the human element of that. right? Having data science individuals, having a legal structure, right, that understands data and what you can and can't do with it, and how that works. Having an operational area that's also participating and realizes how important that data is, and keeping that data up to speed. I think you have to invest across all of those areas, because otherwise you're going to move as slow as the slowest one, right? So, and you might have untapped potential, as a result of any one of those single areas lagging.
The people side is interesting, Dan, and actually, as now Rob has mentioned it, who are the people that make data work within an organization, and does there need to be someone who takes ultimate ownership, so a chief data officer, or who else, who's responsible for data ultimately within an organization, and who are the other people within the organization who make it work?
Yeah, I think it spans across the organization, right? I think data needs to be seen that way. I think a chief digital officer is an important first step. I think working with the chief digital officer and the chief information officer to make sure that they're aligned on both sides of the house is absolutely imperative. As I mentioned earlier, right, if there's dislocation there, it slows things down materially. And I think it's incumbent upon those two sides to sort of derive strategy. It's shocking to me how ill-defined strategy is. And I think it's partly because for some firms, it's evolving and they don't really yet understand where they want to go, and they're looking for others to help curate that. But I think those two sides, the technology side and the business side, talking together and understanding what the business needs are, it's so absolutely critical. And I think politics sometimes can get in the way of having a beneficial relationship there for the firm, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Jaime, I wonder, for instance, from my own perspective, doing some research in Switzerland last year, sort of the data side, data science, if you will, was quite lagging. It was new, in fact, and it's not a criticism, they hadn't done a lot of it historically. So who are the people that these firms need within their organizations to make data properly work, and what are the skill sets that they have?
Well, teams, data people within organizations. Now, I like to call it data science because it's become a really important role within organizations. Actually, we just hired 3 new people, data scientists. I mean, just to help understand our clients, what's going on within their databases and within their solutions. It's becoming so important. So the firms need to make an effort on that side. In order for us to have the same conversation with our team, we need someone to speak the same language. And data scientists has become an important role within the entities. Many firms still don't understand. They still have a data department. That's not enough. You need to have data science so that they can get the most of data, not only from the quality perspective, but also to how am I going to use it? How am I going to leverage all this data? I just saw a question about in this webinar. There were someone. How about client data that is critical? Encryption. What do you do? That's another topic. I mean, to have a secure environment is critical. Just to give you an example, we had to stop a project. We were developing many things, but there was a concern about security of data. Not only because someone from outside the firm can attack, but someone inside could, use the data and have a problem. So, and we spent 2 months just thinking about security of data, encryption, and how we're gonna, make the system really secure. So, do not forget this issue on entities. You can play around with data, but if it's not secure, please stop. Don't do anything, because you can get in real trouble.
Yeah, interesting. It's coming onto the security side and who has access and whether it's well understood, who can have access and those different things. Robert, I know it's often the job of solution providers to lead the market and maybe have more skills than the market, so you sort of carry them forward and give them new ideas and solutions. But thinking to Jaime's point and also to Dan's, is the market ready for doing data the way you would want them to do data, or are they a little bit further behind?
So I'll give you an answer, and the answer is going to be it depends. Probably not the answer you wanted, Stephen, but I think it really does depend. If you look at sort of the ecosystem that we all make up here in wealth management technology, I think some firms, I mean, I was at a conference 5 years ago where somebody was talking next best action, and it kind of blew my mind at the time, right? It felt like it was a little bit, science fiction at the time. So I think there's different degrees of maturity. I think one of the things companies can do, and certainly we do here at SEI, is realize these are internal problems. And opportunities that you need to address, but it's also inclusive of your partners, your vendors, the firms that you that you depend upon, right, as a wealth management provider, platform provider, because again, it's kind of getting back to it. It's there's the client doesn't care where that data came from, right? They want it secure along that entire journey, as Jaime pointed out, because if it's not, you can't sit back and kind of point to somebody else saying, hey, they had an issue, therefore you have an issue. I think that level of governance and kind of stepping back and saying, regardless of level of sophistication, both internally or externally, how do you have program management mindset to that, right? So that if you need to work with, an outside firm to clean something up, that not only that you need to do that, but you've got the relationship and the type of agreements between the firm that those things can be addressed. Because at the end of the day, if it's not addressed, there's the individuals who get harmed are the consumers.
Actually, there's been a question coming from the audience, which is just a perfect for what we're touching on now. So, Jaime, I'll just ask it to you. I'm not sure if you've seen it on front of you, but if you are dealing with client data, how do you deal with privacy? So, is the data encrypted? Is the question that has come in.
I mean, I'm not the expert on that security. I know encryption is a way of securing data. And we've got, a whole team, very focused on this aspect to talk with our clients and understand how what are the way they do it, this encryption or the security, and us adding some maybe new ideas on how to make systems much more secure. But as I said, it's critical. I mean, you cannot ignore this issue because. In financial, we all know you can get in trouble with a regulator, and that's something you don't want to. And the name of the firm can be really damaged if something happens. We've seen this with some entities, and the damage can be huge.
Dan, I don't know. Obviously, you've talked about the client experience and the client journey, and you're building experiences for clients and matching data against personas and different things. Is sort of encryption, privacy, and regulation an issue that holds firms back in terms of doing more to better personalize data towards a particular client?
100%. I think when we think about customer sensitive information, PII, how do we handle that, right? I think firms have to have a very clearly articulated strategy there, and if they don't, right, there's other avenues, right? We can anonymize the data, right, to make that data useful and workable. But when you anonymize like that, you lose key attributes to the data that inhibits, I think, your ability to glean insights and run analytics on it and use it on the front end. So it's a very, very critical, as Jaime said, right? You cannot ignore this. You have to address it head on and very proactively, because you can't find yourself in a reactive position, and it's got to lead from the front, because as I said, right, it flows downhill into the quality and the type of data and the analytic results that you want off of it. So, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Dan, that is spot on, and I think it's as product people and as solution people, I think there was a time when you did a fair amount of design work, and then you went and got that blessed by privacy individuals and legal, and I think those days are gone. I think they have to be proactively involved up front in the ideation phase, let alone when you kind of get into the functional requirements, because if it's not, it's going to feel clunky to a client, right? If you get 90% of the way through a design and a build, and then you try to consider, data privacy or really any kind of data limitations, the user is going to feel that, right? So that's something that is, check early, check off, and bring them along that journey. And by the way, those folks, whether they're specific data people and or on the privacy side, they're full of great information as well. That's going to help you build a better product and a better offering that will ultimately be more valuable to the consumer.
Yeah. If I could just stick with you, you mentioned going to a conference 5 years ago, and the guy was talking about next best actions, and you thought, well, this is sort of science fiction. Like, the industry is nowhere near. This is undeliverable. Whatever it might have been. Where is the industry now on its journey? I mean, is data fully understood? Is the market really moving, or is it really an early adopter with a long way to go?
I think 5 years from now, regardless of how I answer it, I'm sure we will have moved so fast, so far that I'll laugh at this answer I'm about to give. So, but I do think I think the industry has woken up, right? And it's not about disintermediating data out to clients so that it's valuable. It's not even about arming service providers with that information, whether they're advisors or portfolio managers, to be able to give a better client experience. I think it's raising that data up, and regardless of the persona, giving them not just here's the information, but here's the information, here's what it may mean, and by the way, here's what you should do, and then creating a workflow for them to actually do that, right? So don't tell somebody, for example, that, your example, Dan, around, telling somebody that they've got losses that they could potentially realize in a portfolio in December of a tax year. That's valuable. Giving them the ability to take those losses and make sure that they're not breaking any kind of wash sale rules or anything like that. That is a little bit game changing, right? So because then you're not just identifying an issue, you're identifying an issue, you're creating an action step, and then you're enabling that action step in a way that feels that just feels easy and natural, and that it's not 4 different workflows that were bolted together after the fact that people feel, right? If you click on a link and it pulls up a PDF, well, somebody didn't think that through right the first time. And I think there's unfortunately still a lot of that out in the industry.
No doubt.
Yeah.
It's different, right, to say, hey, it's your client's birthday. Next best action is to call them, right? That's an easy path, right? But it's so much more complex than that, and there's such a compliance overlay that I think it's been hard for the industry to find their way there.
Interesting. I wonder also, adding an extra layer to this, because the industry is being dominated by the advisor having the relationship with the client. Is data driven towards the client, or is it driven towards the advisor? Is there is there clarity on where the data goes and who it's to be used by, or is there confusion? Dan, I don't know whether that's a relevant question or not, but it kind of feels like maybe there would be some confusion given the way the industry's been structured historically. And now want to empower clients more, but
I think we're further along there than the industry is at large with next best action. I think there's generally an understanding. I see firms have moved very quickly to understand what kinds of data are relevant and important to consumers and what kinds of data is relevant and important to a professional. And we're helping to bifurcate that too, to marry it up with those personas. So I do think that we're doing a better job there. I think we can do better, right? Like I mentioned, millennials, the amount of data that a millennial will need versus someone from the silent generation is markedly different. And today it's just everybody gets whatever they get. That's not creating the right kind of framework for great experience. So I think there's more work to do there, but I think we're most firms that I speak with are quite far along in that journey.
Yeah, fantastic. Jaime, we have just over 5 minutes left, so I have a few more questions, and I will ask each of you possibly shortly to round up. Jaime, how do firms measure data success? I mean, is this about growing AUM? Is there another KPI that is used to measure whether they're good with data or not?
Well, that's a difficult, I would say, difficult question. But I mean, at the end, you have to see what is the result of all this data. Right? You're naming an important thing. The relationship client, advisor, technology. In the last years, we've always seen this concern about firms. The client is the advisor's client, or the firm's client. Data has a lot to say in that aspect. If you control data, if you manage data properly, the client belongs to the entity. And if the advisor leaves, the client will stay within the entity, because to do all the exercise of the advice is really complex, not having the whole data. So that's really important. I mean, managing data properly. You were talking about best next action. We had a project some years ago with a German firm. They wanted to automate all these best next actions, and we built what we call the priority list. It's getting all that data, understanding, and setting priorities in an automated way. And if there was not a single advisor treating one client, it was a team. So the team always knew what they had to do next, because they had the priority really clear, and they have in the calendar, a team calendar, and individual calendar, whatever there was an action, everything was clear. So automating, and that's all because you got all the data within. So having that data. There's just one thing I just wanted to say. It doesn't have to do anything with your question, Stephen, but it's blockchain. Blockchain, as APIs is right now, something that people want to use it right now. Blockchain is something that in the next 5 years is going to impact. I mean, it's impacting already. And we see within our clients, they're all asking us, hey, you told us about blockchain, how to manage these non-liquid assets and all that. That's a new space on data. And it's got a lot to do with security, because we know blockchain is going to guarantee a lot of security. It's got to solve some issues right now. But once they are, we know that's the trend. And that's something every entity has to start to work on. Start understanding how am I going to use it. And because if you don't start now, you may be out of the game in the next 5 years.
Yeah, interesting. You've made some very interesting points there. That data strengthens the relationship with the client, between the institution and the client, potentially disintermediating the advisor, I don't know, as the market moves forward. Also then the arrival of blockchain, so perhaps similar to what Rob said earlier when he talked about next best action as blockchain might be that conversation now. So we have a couple of minutes left. So Rob, can I just ask for some final statements? So where are we going here? So what more can we expect, with data and wealth management? Where, if you can summarize it as possible, where this is taking the industry?
Yeah, so I think I'll try not to be repetitive with any of the topics we discussed. I mean, we talked about next best action and the ability for it to create valuable touches. We need to be careful it doesn't create annoying touches out to clients as well. Like, you shouldn't be in a situation where that I have where I researched and purchased a mattress 6 months ago, and I still get marketed that based on the data that I look for. I don't buy a mattress every week, so you don't need the banner every screen I go on forever there. So I think we need to be careful about using data in a way that feels natural and feels like it's a positive thing for a client. I think it would be naive for us to think that there's not more regulation coming in this area, that protecting investors' data is not going to be something that's going to be more difficult to do 2 years from now than it is right now, because that's just how things evolve. And again, investing in that and making sure that that's a priority, and then I think we should probably be ready for a next level of disruption from outside wealth management, right? So if you think about it, investors don't care where they first see or get or have an experience, right? Once it's a best in breed experience, they're going to want it to apply to anything that they're consuming, wealth management, retail, travel. So making sure that, we're just not having an insular bend towards what good feels like, comparing ourselves to each other and having a false sense of security, but almost looking at it and saying, I remember when the paradigm shifted and I had somebody confront me after a presentation that said, I get more clarity into a $9 purchase on Amazon and when I bought it to my front door than I do when I transfer my life savings from organization A to organization B. How can that be? And that was a wake-up call for all of us. Robos were a wake-up call. So just making sure that we never get satisfied and you're kind of always looking around what's going on, what are people experiencing, and how do you match that?
Fantastic stuff. Rob, can you give us a couple of short summary thoughts? Sorry, I'm going mad. Dan, I meant Dan.
Yes. No problem. I think Rob did an excellent job summarizing. I mean, spot on. I would just say, I think finding a way to integrate workflow across siloed applications and solutions to streamline the advisor's overall workflow and to improve efficiency is definitely what we're going to see coming down the road. We're not quite there yet, but it's happening for all the reasons that we've talked about today. And I do think, personalization and building these engaged experiences directly with end consumers, we haven't really paid particular attention there, but I think the industry's hand is going to be forced. We're going to have to spend considerably there to drive those experiences and round them out. And I think those are absolutely two dominant themes, and especially as sort of the FANG experiences evolve unto themselves and they get better and better, it's going to put continued pressure on our industry to do the same.
Fantastic. And finally, to Jaime, a quick summary of your thoughts, if possible.
Well, I will finish the same way I started. I mean, data is the base of everything. And that's when TechRules started, we knew that at the beginning. So it's still the biggest issue, treating data, gathering, aggregating. And nowadays, there are so many new sources of data that you have to be even much more efficient. But it's as I said, it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. And I really think it's a great time to really understand and to give a more client-centric solution to it. It's now you have the chance to be much more client-focused.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you for that. Apologies for the name slip then. I think I was spellbound by Rob's answer, and I was like, wow, this is fundamental game-changing stuff for the industry. So thank you all for participating. We'll be back with another WealthTech Talks in a few weeks. So Rob, thank you. Jaime, thank you. And Dan, thank you very much. Really insightful stuff. And we look forward to hosting you again soon.
Great.
Good afternoon.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.